Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Vibrantly Healthy Mom Show. I am so glad that you have joined me here today. Today's episode, it is all about managing your stress rather than having your stress manage you. So before we dive into that, what I would love to have you do is to comment below and just let me know that you're here. I'd love to know that you've stopped by to listen, whether you are here live or you're listening to the recording. Or if you want to just give that simple thumbs up or the little heart, that's great too. I love to know that different ones have been here and like to connect with you. So let's dive into our subject today. It has to do with stress, and I am sure many of you are feeling the stress that goes along with the holiday time and all the extra responsibilities that there are. So it seemed like a good subject to talk about today, not to mention all of the other things going on in our world today that can bring on stress too. So you might be thinking, okay, how in the world are we supposed to be able to manage our stress? Because it feels like our stress just is like out of control and like there's no way to have it not manage us. But I have a few tips and tricks to share with you today, and I hope that you find them to be helpful to you. So the first thing that we need to realize is, number one, we cannot escape stress. There's no way. Unless you're living in a bubble, not connected to any people or any circumstances or anything at all, or maybe just asleep, you are going to have stress in your life. If you live with other people, if you have a job, if you have children, if you have activities that you're involved in, there are going to be things that come along that are going to stress you out. But what's important here is that we learn how to manage it. So you're maybe like, yeah, right. But how do I really do that? Well, first of all, the good thing to know is that there are good stresses and there's bad stresses in our life. They're not all bad. It's super simple to think that when we talk about stress, that it's all bad, and that's not the case. There are good and there are bad. So what is a good stress? Well, think for a moment of something that you're super excited about, but you're a little bit afraid too. Like maybe the first time that you went to an amusement park and you saw that big roller coaster and you wanted to go on it, but you were a little terrified because you knew that it went upside down or it had big hills or whatever, and you were scared, but you really wanted to do it because you knew there'd be that thrill and excitement with it. You wanted to be able to say, I did that, I went on that roller coaster, so you did it. So that stresses you out, but it's a good thing because by you having such a deep desire within yourself to do that, that stress helps you to reach that goal that you wanted to in riding the roller coaster. I had that experience myself here a while back where I had never ridden on a jet ski before, let alone driven one. And my nephew had a jet ski and it was available for me to go on. And I was like, oh yes, this will be so much fun. I'll go with somebody. Well, then everybody convinced me that I needed to drive it because it was not quite the same experience riding on the back with somebody else driving it. So I'm like, okay, well, that sounds a little scary. The lake is big. What if I go flying off from it and the jet ski disappears and I'm like stranded in the middle of the lake? So I was a little freaked out about it, but I really, really wanted to do it. I thought, yeah, that would be kind of fun to control that thing. So it was stressful. It was a good stress, but the goal that I wanted to reach was I wanted to get on that jet ski. I wanted to experience the thrill of it. So I did it. So our good stresses can actually motivate us to help us to grow stronger and to perform better in life. So it's a good thing that we have them, or else there's a lot of things that we just would never accomplish. Now, on the opposite side of that are the bad stresses. And this is where when we think about stress and it being something that, oh, it's not a good thing, it's these kind of stresses that are the problem. We don't have a lot of control what's happening to us when it comes to the bad stresses, and we can feel really trapped. I'm sure you can very quickly picture something in your mind where you were stressed out in this kind of a way with a bad sort of a stress. And we're in that constant threatened state. You've probably heard people talk about before, maybe you've even said it yourself, where you're in that fight or flight mode, but I don't know if you know what that really means. It's kind of like you're always at a point where you have to be ready to go. So think, for example, if you were sitting out in the woods enjoying a beautiful day and all of a sudden the bear walked up and you were sitting there and you were eating your lunch and having a nice picnic and this bear walked up, you'd be like, oh my word, I need to like hightail it out of here. Well, our bodies are made in such a way where they go in that fight or flight mode where we can like instantly like have all this energy that comes over us and we can run and hightail it out of there. So what happens is the blood flow that normally would be going into our stomach to help digest that food is now, for that picnic that we're eating, is now needing to go to our limbs to help take us away quickly from that bear. And if you've ever been in a situation like that, you're like, wow, I didn't know I could run so fast. It's because of that. It's because of that switch over in the nervous system that happens that allows you to run and get away from that bear quickly. So here's the thing. When we are under stress, let's say you have a stressful job or you're having a stressful day with the kids at home and you're just in that constant state of stress, wondering when the next fight is going to break out between your children or whatever it might be. Being in that state of stress, your body doesn't know the difference between just a normal everyday stress and the fact that maybe you're being chased by a bear. It doesn't know the difference. Your body physiologically responds in the same exact way. So if you're stressed out by a fight that just happened between your children or a situation with a deadline that you have with your job or whatever, and then you sit down to eat your lunch in that stressed out state, well, your body is not going to be able to assimilate the nutrients from that food. Because remember what I said about being in that state of fight or flight and how the blood flow isn't going into the stomach and the digestive system to help the nutrients be broken down properly so that your body can use them. Well, that's exactly what's going to happen as you sit down to try to eat that lunch. Your body's stressed. Your body doesn't realize that a bear's not chasing you, and it thinks that you need to have all of that, circulation going to your legs to carry you away from the danger that you're in. When in fact you really need to be able to eat that lunch and be receiving the nutrients from it. So it's not a good place to be. It's why we need to make sure that we are managing these kinds of stresses in our lives. So, and here's the thing, the bad stresses, they can be either acute or they can be chronic. Acute would be something that would come that, was just on any given day where you have no control over it. It comes over you, it's a bad stress, but after that issue resolves, it could be a fairly quick thing, it's gone. But chronic stresses are things where maybe there's a relationship issue or maybe there's a job that is just constantly, chronically causing you stress. Those are the stresses we need to be really concerned about because we are being affected on an ongoing basis physiologically by having these bad chronic stresses. And here's where we need to make the changes. The other thing that's super important to recognize is that we can have good stresses. They're actually good things, but if not handled properly, they can actually turn into bad stresses and vice versa. That we can have bad stresses in our lives, and by just making some tweaks and changes, they can actually turn into being a good thing. So what we need to do is we need to become stress awareness experts. We need to be able to determine if a stress is good or if it's bad, and if some adjustments need to be made. We need to look and say, hey, is this managing me or am I managing my stress? And then if the stress is managing you, it's time to make some changes so that that's not the case, so that you're not suffering as a result. For me, one of the number one things that has helped me is to change my perception of what the stress is, and it can eliminate it as a threat and turn it into something else. It's really a mindset thing. Quick little example of something super simple, and I'm sure you can relate to this kind of a thing. So over the past few years, I've had regular drives that I've had to make over to a town that's should be an hour away, an hour drive on a very busy road, expressway, where it's just a lot of craziness. And what should be just an hour to get there sometimes unexpectedly turns into a 2-hour or more trip. And the drivers can be just crazy. Like, what are they thinking? What are they doing? And so I have appointments to get to, and I found myself getting so stressed out the whole trip over that it really was robbing me of my peace and my joy in my life, and I was just constantly in that fight or flight mode the whole way over. And it happened to be one of our sons was always going with me. And I realized that, I need to change my perspective on this. I need to shift my thinking. So I decided, you know what? There's nothing that I can do about this. I'm in the car. I have to get there at some point, but no matter how hard I worry about it or stress out about it, it's not going to get me there any sooner. It's not going to change anything about the drivers around me. So I might as well just sit back and enjoy the ride. And by doing that, it took away the threat from me. It took away that stressed out feeling. And instead, I was able to have great conversations with my son and connect with him in ways that I wasn't. So I encourage you to do the same. It's a simple shift. It can be not so simple to do, but I challenge you to take a look at things in your life that come up where you can change your mindset and your perspective on it so that you can take away what is feeling like a threat and have it not be such a big deal and not have that stress managing you. God has a purpose in everything that comes across my path. I know that. So because of that, I can embrace the situation wherever I'm at and move forward and just pray that He would give me His perspective on those things. Another thing that is hugely important when it comes to managing stress is being able to oscillate between being fully engaged in things and strategically disengaged. And, what do I mean by that? Well, we can't be on all the time. We can't be like giving and doing all of the time. We have to be in a position where sometimes we're just taking a break so that we can be rejuvenated and refreshed to move on to our things. So for a moment, just picture a marathon runner and a sprinter and the differences between the two. So a marathon runner, their goal, their place that they're running to is very far off. So it's not even in their eyesight and their distant view of where they're running. So basically, because they have to run for such a long time, they have to pace themselves. They have to conserve their energy so that they have some left for later. So they're not giving it their all at every moment, because if they did, they would never finish the marathon. Whereas a sprinter, think about what they're doing. Generally speaking, as you think about, if you've ever been to a track meet and watched sprinters, they have the starting line, and then that finish line is just like right out there, and they're giving it their all. They're running so fast and focusing all of their energy and their attention on that finish line to win. And the difference there is that they don't have to conserve their energy for later. They can worry about that when they're done and they collapse after they've given it their all. And think about physically how they're different. The marathon runner, generally speaking, they're thinner. They can be not quite as healthy looking as a sprinter. They're usually muscular and super robust and healthy looking. So why am I talking about a marathon runner and a sprinter? Well, because the same would hold true for us when we are working on something, like just think of a project that you might have with work to do. And if you're working from morning till night, taking no breaks, and you're just constantly giving of yourself with that project, you're going to get burned out after a fairly short time, where you're not going to be as sharp and as fresh for giving your all to it. So we can't be on all the time. We have to factor in breaks. So we need to optimize our rest and recovery in our daily lives. And again, that could be work. It could be working with your children. You need to have relaxation built into your day. You need to plan it because you need to be fully engaged for a period of time, and then you need to be able to take a break. I remember back when I was very actively homeschooling our 6 young boys, and when I think about getting children ready for school, think about what you have to do. Your children get up in the morning, you have to feed them breakfast, you have to make sure that they have clean clothes to wear, and make sure that you've provided a lunch for them. And then if you're sending your children off to school, they're going on their way, and then you can accomplish things at home. Well, for me, when I was homeschooling my children, I still had to get that breakfast ready. I still had to make sure they had clean clothes to wear. I had to eventually make them lunch and dinner, but they didn't go anywhere. They were there with me all day long, and I was responsible for teaching them. So I realized very quickly that I had to factor time in for rest and relaxation, not only for me, but for them as well. I couldn't expect them to be sitting there at the table nonstop, continually working on math problems or English or whatever it was. And I couldn't continually be teaching them and be on all the time. So I factored in times for us to take breaks. It's exactly one of the reasons why at school there's recess planned, because not only the children, but I think the teachers too need that little break away from the activity that's going on with the children and teaching them. So we need to make sure that we are factoring in planned relaxation times so that we can be refreshed. So that then when we come back to work on what we were working on before, we're going to be ready to dive in a much more clear thinking way, more energetic with our bodies. We're just going to be more focused and be able to give our all. Just like that marathon runner and the sprinter, we need to have those moments of sprinting and putting our all into it, but then we need to just step away, take a break so that then we can go back and do it again. So what are some things that you could do to just step away and, have some relaxation? Well, a lot of it depends on you and what you know works best for you, and how much time that you feel like you have to take away. When I'm having moments where I am super busy and I don't have a lot of time to take away, but I know I need that moment of being refreshed, taking something as simple as like an essential oil and just a calming essential oil like lavender, chamomile, anything like that, where you can just take in some deep breaths just to bring some calming and relaxation away. Or if you don't have an oil, or if you do, just doing some deep breathing just to calm yourself and bring yourself to a place where you can once again focus. Other things you can do if you have time for it, get out and take a quick walk. Whether you have children at home, you might take them all on a walk. Getting outside and just getting away from what you were doing, changing it up, can make all the difference in the world. Or maybe just sitting down, closing your eyes and listening to some peaceful music, or maybe singing some worshipful music. Taking some time to exercise, or some simple stretches or yoga. You can so easily find online these days a quick yoga or stretching routine that 10 minutes, 15 minutes max. Just do some searches on YouTube and have somebody walk you through something like that. And it's amazing what that will do for you in bringing you to the place of being refreshed. Or maybe you love tea. Sit down and have a cup of tea, or just get out in the sunshine. That's one of my favorite things to do. I find the sunshine is so calming and restorative to me that just having a few minutes out in the sunshine really, really helps. Or maybe you have a good book you've been reading. Grab the book, read a few pages or a chapter, whatever you have time for. Or some people like to do this. My husband is really good at this. He can do this for a very short time and it makes a huge difference. I can't do this or I'm done in for the rest of the day. And that's take a nap. He loves to lay down, take a nap, and when he wakes up, he feels refreshed and ready to go. So like I said, know yourself, know what works for you, experiment with some of these different things, and there are plenty of other things beyond what I've even mentioned here that you do. I mean, maybe you have a hobby or a craft that you could just take a few moments in and spend some time doing that. So I encourage you to find what works best for you, because everybody's different and what works for one person isn't going to work right for the next. But the goal here is to get yourself to a point where you are ready to dive back into whatever work you were doing before you took your break. And the last thing that I will say, and this was a game changer for me when my boys were young, and you wake up in the morning when you have a house full of kids, and life, if you don't get up well before them, you can start your day off and it can feel like absolute chaos. Oh my word, can I go back to bed because I can't handle this? So I found it hugely important for myself to have a schedule. This is something that my mom taught me and her mom taught her, and it just really, really works. So what I did is I had a set day for everything. So I had a set day that I washed clothes, and a set day that I did my meal planning for the entire week, not just one day, but for the whole week. And then I had another day where I did the grocery shopping, including all of those ingredients for my meals that I had planned out. So I'd have to go one time. I had a day where I dusted and vacuumed the house, another day where I cleaned the bathrooms, another day where I stripped the beds and then I washed all the sheets and remade them and washed the towels. And then I even factored in every single week a day that I could take away for rest and relaxation with my family every Sunday. So by having these things scheduled on a day, not only did I know what I was facing when I got up for the day, but my family did too. And I could, enlist their help with those things. But it was it was a routine. It was a habit. It was, instead of feeling like, okay, my day is going to control me now when I get up, this chaos, what do? I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do that. It wasn't like that. I knew what I had to do, and I didn't have to worry about the things that were going to come on the other days. And I just felt like I had a whole lot more control, and ultimately that can help with stress. So, as a review, what we've talked about here today is, number one, we need to be aware. Be aware of what is going on in your life with your stress. Be aware if it's good stress or bad stress, and how you need to shift, your whole mindset. So that's the second thing. Shift your mindset where you need to, so that you are not being controlled by the stresses, but you are actually stepping in and taking away that threat that you might feel in your stressful situation. And it's amazing what your mindset can do for you. And the third thing is strategic engagement. Remember, take those times where you're working hard, you're applying yourself fully, but then you're taking rest periods where you can be restored and revived, and that really will make a difference as well. And then have a schedule, whatever that might look like. I will encourage you with one thing, which it took me a long time to realize this. I wasn't very good at this. I can be a super disciplined person where it can become like a rigid schedule. And I learned eventually that I have to be willing to be flexible, and that you're not married to your schedule. If there's like a day where it's like, you want to go do something else for fun with your family or whatever, or somebody asks you to go to lunch or whatever that might be in your world, be willing to flex in your schedule, and don't be rigid. Don't make the mistakes that I made, because that will become a stress in itself. So I do hope that this has been helpful to you as you consider the stresses in your life, and as you work to take charge of them so that they're not managing you. So let me know what things that you try, and let me know how it works for you. I like to know if these things are helpful or not. And then next week, it's Christmas. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe that Christmas is coming next week. I need to get on the ball with my Christmas stuff and not be stressed about it. Just take one thing at a time. But next week, we're going to be talking about keeping routine in the midst of Christmas chaos. So I hope that you can join me then. Thank you for listening today, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week. Bye, everybody.